Common Sense by Thomas Paine, 1776. A key work in the push for American independence. We've updated it to modern English with the classic book Society for easier understanding. Introduction. A long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of being right, and raises at first a formidable outcry in defense of custom. But the tumult soon subsides. Time makes more converts than reason. As a long and violent abuse of power is generally the means of calling the right of it into question. And in matters too which might never have been thought of, had not the sufferers been aggravated into the inquiry. And as the King of England has undertaken in his own right to support the Parliament, in what he calls the right of binding the colonies in all cases whatsoever. And as the good people of this country are grievously oppressed by it, and are every day suffering new hardships and abuses. And as we have now no other remedy left us but to repel force with force, it would be criminal to continue still in silence, especially as the reason of the Parliament's claim and the King's support of it makes a purely despotic system, both of usurpation and law, and will at last lead to the ruining of the colonies. I offer, therefore, some thoughts on the present state of American affairs, which I hope will be received without prejudice by those who are willing to receive truth, as it happens, and by those who are disposed to set aside prejudice and the narrow self-interest of a few men. Chapter 1 of the Origin and Design of Government in General, with concise remarks on the English Constitution. Some people have confused society and government, as if they were the same thing. But they are not only different, they are opposites. Society is produced by our wants, and government by our wickedness. Society is a blessing, government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one. For when we suffer, or are exposed to the same miseries by a government that we might expect in a country without government, our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we provide the means by which we suffer. Society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one, for when we suffer, or are exposed to the same miseries by a government, which we might expect in a country without government, our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. Government, like dress, is the badge of lost innocence. The palaces of kings are built upon the ruins of the bowers of paradise. For were the impulses of conscience clear, uniform, and irresistibly obeyed, man would need no other lawgiver, but that not being the case, he finds it necessary to surrender up a part of his property to furnish means for the protection of the rest. And this he is induced to do by the same prudence which in every other case advises him, out of two evils, to choose the least. Wherefore, security being the true design and end of government, it unanswerably follows that whatever form thereof appears most likely to ensure it to us, with the least expense and greatest benefit, is preferable to all others. In order to gain a clear and just idea of the design and end of government, let us consider a small number of people settled in some sequestered part of the earth, unconnected with the rest. They will then represent the first peopling of any country, or of the world. In this state of natural liberty, society will be their first thought. 1,000 motives will excite them thereto. The strength of one man being unequal to his wants, and his mind to his desires, will hasten him to the society of others. Society will be the means of receiving and communicating mutual happiness. For were an individual to grow rich, his neighbors would view him with envy, but if he would be just, he must necessarily distribute a part of his abundance to others, and on the other hand, were he to fall into distress, he must first look to them for assistance. For by such associations, we are able to improve, enrich, and secure our condition, and by that which is given to us, we are enabled to give back again with profit. The foundation of society, as it is originally formed, is laid in the mutual consent of individuals, who in their natural state have no idea of a sovereign over them. Let us now consider the difference between society and government. The former is a patron, the latter a punisher. Society is produced by our wants, and government by our wickedness. The one encourages intercourse, the other creates distinctions. The first is a blessing, the latter is a necessary evil. Society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one, for when we suffer, or are exposed to the same miseries by a government, which we might expect in a country without government, our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. Government, like dress, is the badge of lost innocence. The palaces of kings are built upon the ruins of the bowers of paradise. The simplicity of early society. In the early stages of society, with just a small number of people, the need for government would be minimal. These people would naturally form bonds, helping and supporting one another. They would establish rules to maintain peace and security, relying on their shared understanding of what is fair and just. However, as the population grows, their interactions become more complex, and conflicts inevitably arise. It becomes difficult to resolve disputes purely through personal ties and mutual understanding. At this point, the need for a structured form of government emerges. This government is established by the people to regulate their affairs and ensure justice, preventing disputes from escalating into chaos. The purpose of government. The primary purpose of government, therefore, is security. It is meant to protect the people from their own selfishness and the potential for harm. Government arises from our imperfections, acting as a necessary means to avoid the worst aspects of human nature. It's a practical institution, not a moral one. Its role is to protect life, liberty, and property, ensuring that everyone can coexist peacefully. The best form of government. The best form of government is the one that secures these goals with the least inconvenience to the people. It should be simple and accountable to the public, serving their needs without becoming an oppressive force. When government is allowed to become too complex or too powerful, it risks becoming a source of suffering rather than security. This is why, from the beginning, society and government must be carefully balanced. Society, driven by cooperation and mutual benefit, should always be the guiding force. Government should be kept in check, acting only as a tool to serve society, not as a master over it. The danger of government power. As society grows and government becomes more established, there is always the risk that it will accumulate too much power. When this happens, the government may begin to serve its own interests instead of those of the people. This is particularly dangerous when leaders become detached from the needs and realities of the people they are meant to serve. A government that forgets its purpose, protecting the rights and security of its citizens, can become a destructive force. History shows that many governments, once powerful, become oppressive, stripping away freedoms instead of safeguarding them. The flaws in the English Constitution. To understand this concept better, we can look at the English Constitution. It is often praised for its balance of power among the King, the Lords, and the Commons. However, upon closer examination, it is clear that this balance is flawed. The system inherently allows the King to wield too much influence, undermining the role of the Commons, the true representatives of the people. In theory, the English Constitution claims to protect the people from tyranny by dividing power. But in practice, it gives the King, who is not elected by the people, significant authority. This creates a system where the interests of the ruling class can easily overpower the will of the common people. The need for a new system. Given these flaws, it becomes apparent that a new system of government is needed, one that is more directly accountable to the people and more resistant to corruption and the accumulation of unchecked power. A system where the government truly serves its purpose, to protect and benefit society, not to dominate or exploit it. Such a government would be simpler, less prone to corruption, and more aligned with the needs and rights of the people. It would ensure that the government remains a servant of society, never its master. Chapter 2, of Monarchy and Hereditary Succession. The absurdity of monarchy. In the beginning, all men were created equal. No person had a natural right to rule over others, and no one was born to be a subject. However, the institution of monarchy, where one person is set above others as king, directly contradicts this natural equality. The idea of monarchy likely arose when societies became too large to govern through simple, direct participation of the people. In times of war or conflict, leaders may have been chosen for their strength or wisdom, but over time, these roles became entrenched. Leaders began to see their position as a right rather than a responsibility, passing their power down to their descendants regardless of their ability to lead. The problem with hereditary succession. Hereditary succession, where the crown is passed down through a family line, is particularly irrational and unjust. Just because a man is capable of ruling does not mean his children will be. A wise and just king can have a foolish and cruel son, yet under hereditary succession, this son would inherit the throne simply by birthright. This system perpetuates inequality and often leads to incompetent or tyrannical rulers. It also places the fate of a nation in the hands of chance, relying on the character of whoever happens to be born into the ruling family. The folly of revering kings. Throughout history, kings have often been seen as almost godlike, set apart from ordinary people. This reverence is not only absurd but dangerous. Kings are merely men, subject to the same weaknesses and flaws as anyone else. To elevate them above others and place them in positions of unchecked power is to invite abuse and tyranny. The practice of monarchy also encourages a sense of superiority among the ruling class, fostering contempt for the common people. This breeds resentment and division within society, weakening the very fabric of the nation. The case against British rule. When applied to the current situation of the American colonies, the absurdity of monarchy becomes even clearer. The King of Britain, an ocean away, has little understanding or care for the daily lives of the colonists. His rule is maintained not through any benefit to the people, but through the force of tradition and the power of the British military. The colonies have grown and developed their own identity, separate from Britain. To remain under the rule of a distant king who neither knows nor values them is both unjust and impractical. It is time to break free from this outdated and oppressive system and establish a government that truly represents the people. Chapter 3: Thoughts on the present state of American affairs. The illogical connection to Britain. Many people argue that the colonies should remain connected to Britain because of their shared heritage and the protection that Britain provides. However, this reasoning is flawed. The colonies have grown far beyond their British origins and have developed their own unique identity and interests. While Britain may have offered protection in the past, it was not out of love for the colonies, but out of its own self-interest. Britain's goal was to exploit the colonies for its economic gain, and the relationship has become increasingly exploitative. The connection is more a burden than a benefit. The cost of staying attached. Maintaining ties with Britain comes with significant costs. The colonies are dragged into Britain's conflicts and wars, which have little to do with them. The resources and lives spent in these conflicts are not in the best interest of the colonies, but serve the interests of the British Crown. Moreover, the distance between Britain and America makes effective governance impossible. The colonies are too far away to be properly managed by a distant king and parliament. Decisions made in Britain are often ill-informed and detrimental to the well-being of the colonies. The natural right to independence. Every society has the natural right to govern itself. The American colonies have matured and are fully capable of self-governance. The time has come for the colonies to assert their independence and form a government that reflects their values and needs. It is illogical to think that a small island should govern a vast continent. The colonies are large enough and strong enough to stand on their own. They do not need to be ruled by a distant monarchy that does not understand or care for their unique challenges and aspirations. The danger of delay. Delaying independence only prolongs the suffering and exploitation of the colonies. The longer they remain under British rule, the more harm will come to the colonies, economically and socially. The opportunity to break free and establish a just and equitable society is now, and it must be seized. The future of America depends on the courage to declare independence. By doing so, the colonies can create a nation founded on freedom, equality, and the true representation of the people's will. Chapter 4 of the presentability of America, with some miscellaneous reflections. America's strength and readiness for independence. America is not as weak and vulnerable as some may think. In fact, it has the resources, the manpower, and the strength to be independent and to thrive on its own. The colonies are self-sufficient in many areas: agriculture, manufacturing, and trade. They do not need to rely on Britain or any other foreign power for their survival. The colonies have a wealth of natural resources and the ability to create a strong economy. They also have a growing population and the energy of determined, capable people who want to govern themselves. The idea that America is too weak or too unprepared for independence is a misconception. Military capability. While some may worry about the colony's military ability to stand up to Britain, America has the potential to form a strong and capable military force. The colonies are full of people willing to fight for their freedom, and they can organize their resources and manpower effectively. Moreover, America is geographically positioned to make any foreign invasion costly and difficult. It is true that Britain's military power is vast, but it is also stretched thin, and its resources are spread across the globe. The British military is far away, and the American colonies have the advantage of being on home soil. With resolve and unity, America can defend itself and protect its newly won independence. The support of other nations. America does not have to fight alone. There are other nations, such as France and Spain, who would likely support the colonies in their struggle for independence. These nations have their own reasons to oppose Britain, and their support could prove invaluable. Furthermore, America's struggle for independence would inspire other nations seeking freedom from oppressive rule. By standing up for liberty, America could become a beacon of hope for the world, showing that people can govern themselves and create their own future without being subjected to tyranny. The moral obligation to act. The time for action is now. The moral argument for independence is clear. The colonies are being oppressed by a government that does not care for their well-being. Britain's policies are destructive, and the colonies have the right to resist and to form their own government. It is not only a political necessity, but a moral imperative. The people of the colonies have waited long enough for justice, and they must now take the step toward independence. Every day that passes without action is another day of suffering and exploitation. The colonies must take control of their own destiny and free themselves from British rule. Miscellaneous reflections. The future of America. If America is to succeed in its bid for independence, it must remain united. The colonies must set aside their differences and work together toward the common goal of freedom. The future of the nation depends on the unity and commitment of its people. America must also be vigilant and cautious in its dealings with other nations. While it will need allies in its struggle for independence, it must be careful not to fall into the traps of foreign entanglements or corruption. The nation must always prioritize the welfare and freedom of its people above all else. America's future is bright, but it must be built on the foundation of liberty, equality, and self-governance. By breaking free from British rule, the colonies will pave the way for a new world of freedom and opportunity. Chapter 5: The New Government, a Republic. The necessity of a republic. Once the colonies have declared their independence, they must establish a new form of government. The government they create should be one that truly reflects the principles of freedom and equality. The best system for this is a republic, a government where power is held by the people and their elected representatives, not a king or monarch. In a republic, the people have the power to choose their leaders, and those leaders are accountable to the people. This ensures that the government serves the interests of the people, not the interests of a single ruler or a small elite. The failures of monarchy and hereditary succession. In contrast to monarchy, which places power in the hands of a single person based on birthright, a republic allows for leaders to be chosen based on their abilities and virtues, not their lineage. In a monarchy, a king's power is often inherited, and his rule can be characterized by tyranny, incompetence, or indifference to the needs of the people. A republic, on the other hand, is based on the idea that rulers are selected for their wisdom and their commitment to serving the people. Leaders are not born into power, they are chosen through elections. This ensures that the government remains responsive to the needs of the people and can be changed when necessary. The people's role in government. In a republic, every citizen has a role to play. The people must be informed, engaged, and active in the political process. They must participate in elections, choose their leaders wisely, and hold those leaders accountable for their actions. A republic depends on the active involvement of the people to ensure that the government remains just and effective. Moreover, a republic is grounded in the principle of equal rights for all citizens. Every person, regardless of their birth, wealth, or status, has the right to participate in the governance of the nation. This is the essence of democracy, the people's right to govern themselves and shape their own future. The role of representatives. In a republic, representatives are chosen to act on behalf of the people. These representatives must be accountable to the people and must work in the best interests of the nation. They are not above the law or the will of the people, and they should be removed from office if they fail to fulfill their duties. The system of representation allows for a balance of power. Instead of one person having absolute control, the power is distributed among a number of elected officials who are responsible for different aspects of government. This creates a system of checks and balances that prevents any one branch of government from becoming too powerful. The importance of a constitution. A new government must also be based on a written constitution, a set of fundamental laws that defines the structure of the government and protects the rights of the people. The constitution should establish clear rules for how the government functions, how leaders are elected, and how power is distributed. It should also safeguard individual liberties and ensure that no one person or group has too much power. The Constitution provides the framework for a republic to function properly. It sets the boundaries within which the government operates, ensuring that the rights of the people are protected and that the government remains accountable to the people. The vision for America. America's new government must be one that reflects the principles of freedom, equality, and justice. It must be a government that serves the people and is based on the will of the people. In creating this new system, America has the opportunity to establish a model for the world, showing that a government can be founded on the principles of liberty and democracy, where power is vested in the people and where leaders are held accountable for their actions. By creating a republic, America can build a government that is free from the tyranny and corruption that have plagued other nations. A republic is the ideal form of government for a nation that values freedom and equality, and it is the form of government that will ensure that America can fulfill its promise as a land of liberty and opportunity. Chapter 6 of the Constitution of England. The structure of the English government. The British system of government is not as glorious and stable as some believe. While it might seem like a model of wisdom and order to those who are used to it, upon closer examination, it reveals deep flaws and contradictions. The British government is built on a system of monarchy and aristocracy, with a king at the head and a class of nobles who hold power based on birthright rather than merit. The government claims to be based on laws, but it is truly rooted in a system that is more about power than justice. In England, the king is not just a figurehead. He holds real power, despite the existence of a parliamentary system. The monarch is seen as the supreme authority, above the law, and can veto laws passed by Parliament. This centralization of power in one person is dangerous and unjust, as it creates the potential for tyranny. The flaws of hereditary power. One of the key problems with the English system is hereditary succession. Power is passed down from one generation to the next based on bloodline, not ability. The king, who holds immense power, is not elected by the people and may not even be qualified to rule. The system ensures that power remains in the hands of a few wealthy families, which creates inequality and limits opportunity for the broader population. This system is inherently undemocratic. It denies people the right to choose their leaders based on their merit or wisdom. Instead, they are stuck with rulers who have inherited their position, regardless of whether or not they are competent or just. The imbalance between king and parliament. The English government also gives too much power to Parliament, but not in a way that benefits the people. Parliament is supposed to represent the people, but it is often controlled by the aristocracy and the monarchy. This leads to laws that favor the elite and restrict the rights of ordinary people. Even though Parliament is supposed to be the voice of the people, it frequently acts in the interests of the monarchy and the aristocracy. The system allows the king to interfere in Parliament's work and prevents the people from having true representation. The monarchy and the aristocracy hold all the real power, while the common people have little say in their own governance. This imbalance undermines the basic principles of justice and fairness. America's break from British tyranny. The colonies must recognize that the British system is deeply flawed and not something they should emulate. In fact, the colonies have every right to break free from this system. America does not need a king or an aristocracy to thrive. It is time to create a government that is based on fairness, equality, and the consent of the people, not on hereditary privilege and monarchy. In breaking away from Britain, America has the opportunity to create a better system of government, one that puts power in the hands of the people. The current British system is a relic of an outdated and unjust era. America can do better. The colonies do not need to be ruled by a monarchy or an elite class. They can create a government that serves the people and reflects their values. The importance of independence. It is crucial for the colonies to fully embrace the idea of independence. They should no longer look to Britain as a model for how to govern. Instead, they must recognize that they have the ability to create their own future. They are not dependent on the British monarchy, nor should they be. The colonies have the strength, resources, and capacity to stand on their own. The colonies' fight for independence is not just a political struggle. It is a moral one. The British government has shown itself to be unjust, oppressive, and corrupt. It is time for the colonies to break free from this system and build something new, something that reflects their values and their aspirations for freedom and justice. Chapter 7: The Monarchy and Hereditary Succession. The problems of monarchy. Monarchy, as a system of government, is inherently flawed. The idea that one person, born into a particular family, should have absolute power over a nation is completely unjust. The king's position is not earned through merit, intelligence, or ability, but solely by inheritance. This practice of hereditary succession creates a dangerous imbalance of power, as those who hold authority may not be fit to rule, and yet their power is unquestioned simply because of their birth. When a monarch holds absolute power, as is the case in Britain, there is no check on their authority. The king is seen as divinely ordained, above the law, and beyond accountability. This concentration of power in one person is not only unjust but also leads to corruption and the abuse of power. It is simply not reasonable for one individual to hold such vast power, especially when they are not elected by the people, nor do they represent the interests of the people. The tyranny of hereditary rule. The idea that a person's right to rule is based on their birth rather than their qualities or virtues is fundamentally flawed. A king is not chosen for their intelligence, wisdom, or leadership abilities, but because of their ancestry. This means that power is often passed to individuals who are unfit to lead, simply because they were born into the right family. This results in bad governance and a lack of accountability. Hereditary rule also means that the monarch's power is passed down to their children, even if those children are not capable of leading or making wise decisions. This creates a cycle of bad leadership that can span generations. When a nation is governed by a monarch whose right to rule is based on nothing more than their family's lineage, the people are at the mercy of a ruler who may be completely out of touch with their needs or desires. The danger of monarchy to liberty. Monarchy is particularly dangerous to liberty because it gives one person absolute control over the lives of many. A king is not bound by the will of the people, instead, they are free to govern according to their own desires, regardless of the consequences for the people they rule. This leads to oppression, as the king can pass laws that benefit only themselves and their allies, without regard for the common people. A monarchy undermines the principles of liberty because it denies the people the right to choose their leaders and to have a say in how they are governed. In a monarchy, the king's word is law, and the people have no recourse to challenge that law. This absolute power is incompatible with the freedoms and rights that every citizen should enjoy. The injustice of hereditary succession. Hereditary succession is inherently unjust. It is not fair that someone should inherit the right to govern simply because of their family background. The right to rule should be based on an individual's abilities, their wisdom, and their commitment to serving the people. In a hereditary system, those who are born into power are often disconnected from the needs of the people, and their decisions can be motivated by self-interest rather than a desire to serve the public good. Moreover, hereditary succession often leads to a concentration of power in the hands of a small group of families or individuals. This creates a system of privilege and inequality, where the masses have no opportunity to challenge those in power or to change the system. It is a system that perpetuates inequality and prevents social mobility, trapping people in positions of power that they did not earn and denying others the chance to rise based on their merits. The call for a new system. Given the inherent flaws and injustices of monarchy and hereditary succession, it is clear that the colonies must break free from this system. They must reject the idea that one person, chosen by birth and not by merit, should hold power over the people. It is time for a new system, one that is based on the principles of liberty, equality, and justice. the colonies have the power to create a government that reflects their values and serves their needs. They do not need a monarch to rule over them. Instead, they can create a republic where the people have a say in how they are governed and where leaders are chosen based on their abilities, not their birthright. The monarchy has failed to serve the people, and it is time to break free from its grasp. A government based on hereditary rule cannot provide the justice, freedom, and equality that the colonies deserve. It is time for a new beginning, one where the people are in control of their own destinies and where power is distributed fairly and justly among all citizens. Thank you for listening to Common Sense. If you enjoyed the book, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others. Your support helps us bring more timeless works to life. See you in the next video.